Today I'm taking my polka dot obsession to a whole new level. Big dots, tiny dots, every color you can imagine, and I'm using them all in a pattern I've never done before. Let's see how this goes. This is my polka dot stash. I used to collect dots in every color and size you can imagine. These days, I try to hold back, but clearly it's still a problem. Every single dot I own is right here, and I'm about to use them all in just one quilt. Today's pattern is a first for this channel. I have never used this block on a quilt before. I've made blocks individually, but never put them all together until now. We are making a flying geese quilt the easy way. There are loads of ways to make flying geese. The traditional way creates way too many scraps for me. Then there's paper piecing and a couple of ways using rulers. But my method is zero waste, and we get to make 4 at a time, which is the exact number we need, so perfect. I'm cutting squares in 2 sizes on all 18 of them. 1 7.5 inches for the goose and 4.5 inches for the sky. This is for a 3 by 6 inch block. And now we get to pick our first fabric combo. First, we draw a diagonal line on the smaller squares. Then we add 2 1/4 inch lines on both sides of that line. Next, we place 2 squares over the bigger square like so. And once they're overlapped, there should be just straight lines. Next step is to sew on the 1/4 inch lines real quick. Now we cut the line in the middle and we press. And this is why it's called the heart method. Next, we take those 2 extra squares as we place them in the middle of our heart and do the same thing all over again. We press again. And time to trim. We want 3.5 by 6.5 because of the seam allowance. Don't forget to make sure there is a 1/4 inch allowance on top of your goose point. I made this big enough so there will be plenty to trim. And here we go, 4 flying geese with no waste done in a jiffy. Let's do this again 17 more times. Well, 17 times 4, but since we are making 4 at a time, it doesn't really count. I think this is actually the first time I'm making a quilt block that's not a square. Well, it will be once we put 8 of them together, but if you look at each of these as a separate element, it is completely different from what we usually do. And when I combined my fabrics, I wanted big contrast between my sky and my geese. We need the different elements to really pop. And I love that I get to use the same combo both ways, but you don't have to, if you prefer using all different fabrics for your blocks. And if you use a white or a really light fabric, it's a really cool effect if you use all white for one element and all color for the other, regardless if white is for the sky or the geese. People usually go white for the sky, but it will look pretty cool if you do it the other way around. And that's for the whole polka dot idea. It actually came from an intervention that turned sideways. Mike was saying the other day that I had too many different polka dot fabrics and I could make a whole quilt with them. To which I replied, challenge accepted. It was a bit tricky finding the right pattern though, because it needed to be a really simple one. There was a big risk everything would look too messy, that the shapes in the pattern would get lost in all the dots. This, however, is perfect for these fabrics. And can I just take a moment to swoon over my new sewing machine? I love how smooth it runs and all the little features I'm still learning to work with. And if you want to watch an unboxing of this machine, just don't forget to stop by my Patreon, and all you need to do is sign up for a free member. And if you want to watch all the exclusive content I add on there, as well as early releases of all my YouTube videos every week ad-free, we have other plans available too. I would say the hardest part about this pattern is being able to sew on the lines as perfectly as you can. Use an open toe presser foot to have more control of where the needle is going, and maybe do it slower, if that helps you maintain control of your stitches like it does for me. Wonky squares means wonky triangles, which will look, well, wonky. The main concern though is if those sides are too wonky, you will struggle when it's time to trim those perfect flying geese. And if you cut them in different sizes because of that, you will struggle to sew them all together. This really is the kind of pattern where you want to take your time and be careful to make sure everything is as straight as you can possibly make it to make life easier for yourself. But you know, there's going to be a little bit of wonkiness, and that's okay too. Wonkiness, as far as I'm concerned, is what makes sure every quilt you make is one of a kind. Now, flying geese are extremely versatile. There are a lot of things you can do with them, so let's play a little bit. Ah, what a pretty gaggle. Thank goodness they are silent though. And I'll be honest, for some reason I was never a big fan of this block. It looked too complicated to make for what you got in return. Maybe because I only knew how to make it the traditional way. But now I see why it's some people's favorite. Doing it this way, it's quick, fun, and I don't know if it's the polka dots, but there's something really special about this one. One of those simple but stunning quilts I keep wanting to make over and over again. And polka dots? I mean, everything looks better in polka dots, regardless of the size, of the colors, of the pattern. They just work every single time. Now, as usual, this is a sample of what you can make with this pattern. If you want a bigger piece, just keep adding them in groups of 8 and watch as your quilt grows. And that's actually a very good way to organize this quilt pattern. First, we sew the geese into groups of 4 vertically. Then we join these groups in pairs, making it a square. How pretty are these? Let's make some more. We want 9 of these squares, so 18 groups of 4. And that's why we tend to look at flying geese as an element within a quilt block instead of quilt blocks on their own, because these squares just make more sense, don't they? That means we have to take that extra step of making sure our square combos make sense. It's not just about joining geese vertically, it's about mixing 4 fabrics together and making them look stunning. And here are our 9 blocks ready to be put together into one awesome quilt top. Now, if I was to complete this quilt, this is when I would sew the rows and then do some quilt as you go when I joined the rows into the quilt top. But today, I'm just doing the top, so all I need to do is nest my seams to make sure they will look perfect together. And here we have it, some polka dot flying geese ready to take flight. How cute are these? No big contrast to different patterns. You know, sometimes a couple of polka dots is all you really need for a stunning quilt. I love it, I hope you do too, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!